viewers, please join me in welcoming Eric Gnock, who's the COO and co-founder of Klook, our partner for this event, who's been in Singapore this past few months. Eric, please join me on stage.
Hi, Suwon. I hope you're
Hey,
doing
Eric.
well.
I'm okay. I'm surviving.
I'm glad I saw you at least last time in February in person.
I know, right? It was our first face-to-face meeting, and here we are, remote again. But anyway, when I caught up with you in February, you had been to Thailand and you were looking to travel somewhere else. So have you been to different places now?
Well, actually, interestingly, I went back to Thailand. I actually just got back 3 days ago. It was interesting to actually go back because we had some follow-up meetings that we wanted to carry on since the last meeting. But I do have some travel plans already figured out for the next few weeks. So excited to be back on the road.
Wow. So you're using Singapore as your launch pad to basically travel around Southeast Asia. But what have you discovered during these trips, and what have you learned, what have you learned new?
Well, I would say that the travel bug is real, especially for those who have managed to take that first leap of faith.
Eric, you're not being funny, are you, that the travel bug is real? Because I got the bug.
Yes. No, but it is true, because when I met some people, including yourself, right? Once you started getting back on the road, you're like, I want to get on the next trip and the next trip. But I think it's two extremes. I'm seeing some people who are very avid. They've went on multiple trips already in the last 4 months, as well as a large group of people who are still with this wait and see attitude. So I think today's conversation will be very, very helpful for all of us in the industry to understand how to bring travel back with more confidence or with more trust.
Absolutely, I agree, And so did you, as a traveler, I mean, given that you hadn't traveled for 2 years as well, did you do anything differently? I mean, did you seek out anything different? What does your generation now want when you travel?
Yeah, surprisingly, I mean, I think pre-COVID, I'm the type of guy who's like, I'm going to go the off the beaten type of itineraries. But on the recent travel, I actually went back into the so-called cookie cutter itineraries. Like in Bangkok, I actually went to see the Palace Museum, the Grand Palace, which I haven't been on my so many trips in Bangkok. And I think it felt new, right? Despite the fact that you've been there for so long, and also the fact that it's less crowded. So I would say that even for places that we think that we are so familiar with, it's time to really rediscover those destinations. So it's been fun, actually, just kind of revisiting the most popular spots without the big crowds.
I agree with you because, as I said, when I was in New York, I went back to as you say, the tourist spots that I had seen like 10 times before. When I was in Angkor, in Siem Reap, I went back to the temples, and to be like one of only 2 people in the temples, that's kind of recaptured, the feeling of that first, travel that we had. So going back to familiar sites, but also seeking new stuff as well. So now let's look at the reopening of Asia. And every week now I'm getting really good news, and I just want to share a new data on recovery that I got from Travelport, which was just basically last week. And it really shows, happy news about Philippines and Thailand accounting for over half of all new bookings in the region. And top 5 countries traveling to Southeast Asia are the US, UK, Australia, Saudi Arabia, and South Korea. What are your own trends showing you at Klook, Eric? What trends are you seeing?
Yeah, so for cross-border, just in the recent few weeks, we're seeing bookings growing actually 3 times the size of what it was in the beginning of February this year. So it's definitely coming back very strongly. Where are the travelers coming from for us? I would say that Singaporeans are definitely back on this travel revenge trend. So taking up our number 1 outbound spot. Number 2 and 3 are actually South Korea, and as well as Philippines for us.
Interesting, right? So, just now the poll that I asked, Eric, it'd be interesting. Almost 60% of our audience say they have not traveled in the last 4 months, so that's a high percentage. And the reason that's holding them back is really confusing rules and restrictions. I mean, there's, 60%, but about 34% saying uncertainty and fear, but really it's the confusing rules and restrictions holding people back. But regardless, it's really good at this moment to be able to speak about growth, right? And for the last 2 years, we've just been talking about survival and ensuring we have enough cash, So it's really good to be able to look up, over the horizon now. And a lot of small businesses have struggled, right? So what can we do as an industry to ensure the small businesses in particular? Because when I went to Siem Reap, a lot of small businesses were struggling. How do we get them to return and now keep our destinations in Southeast Asia as diverse and as beautiful as it's always been?
Yeah, well, I think, me coming to Singapore and having spent, 4 months time here, what I've really gotten away is the sharing of knowledge and the learnings, right? So I think today's panel and the subsequent events will really give us that opportunity to learn what's going on with the markets that have opened, markets that are opening, etc. So I think learning and sharing of knowledge. Second, I think is collaboration. So I've been a strong believer of public and private, and I think with a crisis like that, it's one of our or probably the most worst crisis that could have happened to the travel industry. So private plus the public sector coming together in terms of collaboration. And last, I would say, is the innovation, right? Travel is definitely coming back in a different form and different shape. And how we stay ahead of that to innovate and develop new services and products for the consumers.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I definitely observed in the UK, and is the tech adoption and the people using QR codes everywhere. In the past it was really only us in Asia doing it, but now QR codes are everywhere globally, right? So this has been a global adoption of tech. So what's interesting too is the opportunity of vocations. You heard what I talked about, Hadrian's Wall, right? And when I visited that village and how different people came to live and work together in a place, and that seems to be coming up, and it seems to cut across older generations, i.e. I believe people as old as me want to do remote work with people as young as you, right? So how do you think your generation will embrace this notion of live, work, and play, and also how destinations can then cater to your needs?
Yeah, so that's something that we've been thinking for our consumers, but also for our staff. We have about 1,000 people that are across most of the markets in Asia. So I think for the consumer, I think for sure we're seeing the trend of what I call bleisure, right? The combination of business and leisure together. So the workcation, some may call it. So I think our generation is going to be definitely the first adopters of that and leading the pack on this front. For our staff, we are actively looking into what is this hybrid work model, right? Hybrid work model does not only just means going back to the office 2 times or 3 times a day, the seating area, but also with this bleisure era that's going to come into place, how we can stay flexible, but at the same time able to maintain, productivity for the staff.
Right. So how can travel companies tap into this new demand where, like Klook, for example, maybe you will say, okay, you can have 2 months off, where you can work from anywhere. So how would a travel supplier tap into this opportunity?
Yeah, so, during COVID, we've been working with a number of hotel operators to launch so-called staycation. Now, that staycation was mainly for people that just, in their own city or in their own country, going there for leisure. But now we're actually working with them to cater for packages that will cater for bleisure type. So long stay, right? 3 or 1 week, 2 weeks, 30 days. In Asia, in Europe and US, I think we've seen Airbnb really picked up, right, with a long stay. Unfortunately, I would say that supply is very different here, right? Supply still mainly come from hotel operators. And how do we cater for that? I think that's definitely something that we need to work on.
Right. So, I look forward to your next panel because I think you're going to get into, discussions with 2 tourism boards and how they're going to cater to this new traveler. So, Eric, I am now going to leave you to run the next panel.
Thank you, Sue.
Yeah.
Thank you. And